Hello, everyone. Before the episode starts, I just wanted to hop on and say, first of all, this is the third time I've tried to record this, which is a little silly. Like, hello, Allison, you know how to talk to people. What's going on? But there is something going on. Something occurred and it's sad, and I'm going to tell you. Today's Friday, and on Wednesday night, my dad died. So yeah, I usually post immediately. I usually announce things right away, and I talk about everything, and I don't fart without Patreon knowing about it. And yet this is just, I have not felt ready to talk about it yet. I know it's less than 2 days ago. But I think I don't know if I'm ready even right now. But I don't know. I'm testing the waters of seeing how it feels to say it and to talk about it a little bit. Anyway, he was asleep. I think that all things considered, it was a really good, fortunate way to go. We're all sad, but we'll be okay. It was not completely a surprise, although it still feels like a surprise. It still was a shock when I got word. I talked to him, and I saw him 2 weeks ago, and we had a really good conversation, and he seemed very with it. So I feel really fortunate that I had that. I'm right now in that phase where I'll think of something that I want to tell him, and then I'll remember I can't. Or I got an email this morning, and I was walking to my desk and I could see the screen, and for a second I was like, oh, it's an email from my dad, because that looked like his email address. It wasn't. It was from the company that's going to tent our house for termites. So not the same, but taking care of me in a way. I'm joking. They're fine. They're lovely. They're a lovely termite company. I don't have, a parental feeling toward them. Anyway, my relationship with my dad was complicated, but not so complicated that I think it's going to make the grieving harder. I think, well, we'll see. It's early days. It's early days. I think right now, most of the things I feel pretty at peace with. Or I might look back and think, remember when I thought that? That was silly. We can find out together. Anyway, I'm sure I'll be talking more about this in the days to come. But this is just a trial balloon of seeing how it feels to use the words. It doesn't feel great, I'll say that. This episode is an encore of the Imperi episode. Imperi is a thanatologist. That's the study of death, dying, and grief. Alie Ward of Ologies recommended her. They're really good friends. Cole has been so nice to me since this happened. So helpful. She and Alie came over this morning, and it really was invaluable and helpful and just so nice and made me feel so good. And Cole brought homemade focaccia, brought grief, care packages for my kids with these wonderful little bug terrariums in them. And they're both outside, collecting leaves and bugs to put in the little, or habitat terrarium. No, habitat, I guess. It was so I just get yourself a Imperi if you're planning on losing someone, is what I'm saying. So anyway, this is the episode with her. It originally ran in February. It was a lot of people's, one of their favorite episodes of my show. And even though she's a thanatologist, she has it's not a sad or morose episode at all. It's actually, I would say, pretty light. Would I say that? I think so. On the lighter side. Do Do you remember in Mad Magazine, they would have like the lighter side of? That was a good magazine. R.I.P. Mad Magazine. And also R.I.P. my dad. And also if I say something later that's controversial, R.I.P. my mentions, you know? Okay. Anyway, more from me soon. I am okay. Do not worry about me. I'll be okay. I have a support system and I have focaccia, so I'm good. And of course, I'll talk more about it, so don't worry. But did my nose just whistle? Oh, listen. You guys, is that my dad? Just kidding. That was a sniffle to put out the whistle. Okay. It's time for me to go because now I'm making no sense. Oh, also follow me on TikTok, the Allison Rosen, because I posted a video about a question I have for like one of the viral sensations on TikTok is this woman who dips raw vegetables and chicken sausage in mustard and cottage cheese. Have you seen this video? And it's very like, is this fetish? Because she's just picking up gigantic phallic shaped food and eating it and like crunching and dribbling. And it's a feast for the eyes and the senses. And the more I learn, the more issues I have. And also, I invented eating hearts of palm. I'm just kidding. But, you know, a lot of people don't know about her. Whatever. This is not about hearts of palm. This is about this woman. And I'm like afraid to speak because I feel like her haters are going to come get me because they are like hardcore defending her a little bit in the comments on the video. I don't have a lot of followers yet on TikTok. I'm fairly fresh. So most of my videos don't get a lot of views, but this one got a lot. And I'll just share with you what I'm wondering. When I watch her videos and I look at, like, she'll eat raw Brussels sprouts and, like, she picks up a whole cucumber and just dips it and then just crunches. And it's just like, I look and I'm like, do you take massive shits? And I've been wondering whether I should leave that comment. It's a pretty lighthearted video. Really not, I'm not really sticking it to her, you know? But people are like, I got one of these. I got, and listen to this, guys. Have the day you deserve. I wanted to be like, well, my dad just died, so, but then I was afraid that instead of being like, instead of saying like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, they'd be like, well, that's karma. And then I'd have to, hate a stranger. I feel more comfortable just strongly disliking the way someone eats food in my face on TikTok. I'll just tell you guys what my issues with her are. I don't care. Come after me. She's a proponent of raw dairy. And if you're going to propone raw dairy, then I feel like you're anti-science. And then I looked her up on Twitter. She was only following 5 people and she hasn't posted in a couple of years. But take a guess who 2 people she follows are. Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And then there's a third thing. Oh, and she says that she has to eat this way. Well, she's on a weight loss journey, but she has to eat this way because of her chronic Lyme disease. But if you look up the recommendations for Lyme disease diet, it's very different than what she's eating. That alone is not a reason enough to dislike her, but I just feel like there's a real, like, is she a Q person? Is Q still a thing? Like how deep does how deep does the anti-science go is what I'm wondering. But to be perfectly honest, I just wanted to know, does all that roughage give you massive shits? A lot of other people were like, and imagine the gas. And even a dietitian weighed in, like, these are sulfurous, cruciferous, stinky farts that she's got to be dealing with. And I was like, thank you. it started there. And then people started digging in with the like, oh, you're afraid to say it to her, but you'll make a video about it. And it's like, yeah, because I don't want her to take it the wrong way. And she's got, millions of views and like not that many people are going to see this. I think this is actually whatever. So, so then people started taking issue with my pretty light video. And that made me go, you know what? There's other things I don't like about her. So now you know. This was much longer than I intended it to be. I love you all. Enjoy this episode.
Allison Rosen is your new best friend. Allison, with her good times never end. Allison Rosen, doing the wavy pencil dance again. Allison's your new best friend.
Hey everyone. Hi. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Allison Rosen is your new best friend. I am delighted to introduce you to my guest today. This is someone that I have been wanting to have on the show for a very long time, and I'll get into all that. But she is a thanatologist, and you might be thinking, what is that? And she can explain it better than I can, but I will take a whack at it. It is someone who studies death, dying, grief, and mourning.
Yeah.
Oh, I did it!
Nailed it.
She also founded the School of American Thanatology, and lest I forget, it is on her coffee cup, which is across from me. So it's like I have my own cue card here. And she does a host of other things. Please put your hands together for Imperi.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hi.
Very excited to be here.
Very excited to
I
meet you.
live here now. So
I know.
I could just drive, a couple neighborhoods over. It's wild.
I know. You were hanging out with Alie Ward earlier, and you guys have like a weekly work session where you get together and work.
Yes, and it really helps because I think on Fridays, I'm prone to be like, oh, it's Friday. Do whatever I want. So I don't do stuff, and then I put it off. So when Allie comes over on Fridays, and then I know, okay, I have to do at least some stuff. And then she comes, and we both get things done.
See, that is so great.
It works really well.
Another guest on the show, Caroline Moss, who hosts Gee Thanks Just Bought It, and then Nora McInerney, who hosts Terrible Thanks for Asking, who's coming on in March.
Oh, cool.
They take trips together to Las Vegas, and they post on social media about it. They get a really nice room, which during the week in Vegas is not that expensive.
Right.
And then apparently they get a ton of work done. I am envious of all these setups,
really
but I
smart.
feel like I would just fuck off.
I mean, I don't know, though, because you would think that. But, okay, honestly, my opinion of Las Vegas is, number one, it's one of my favorite cities, but for the, nature around the area. But I love staying on the Strip, and usually I'm there for conferences, and I get a ton of work done when I am in Las Vegas. I don't know what it is, but that environment, I'm just okay, I need to, finish this. I need to reply to this email I've been putting off for 3 months. And I'm, in the Vegas energy, and I'm I can get it done now. So, I don't know. It might work. You gotta try it.
You gotta be a third on their trip, because I don't think I've ever felt the Vegas energy lead to returning emails. But I love this idea.
See, the hardest part of my, I guess, personality, or I guess my flaw is email. I cannot get it together. That is the area in my work where I'm always oh my God, that important email I didn't respond to another week. And I don't know why my brain blocks this. That is the part of my job that I am the worst at. I hate the most, and I'm not good at it. And I don't know how to eliminate it from what I have to do, because I wish I could.
Is it specifically email, or is it communication?
No, it's just email. It's just email.
The problem that I have, hang on one second. Hello, Tony Thaxton.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm here for all your thaxatology needs.
Ooh, and what is thaxatology? Study of Thaxton.
Yeah. I mean, it seems pretty obvious.
We've already gotten to the bottom. You should have, Alie Ward should have you on her show. It'd be
Very huge episode.
Mini-sode. It'd be about, this is what it would be about.
Oh, God. Here we go. Let me guess.
Take it away.
That I don't wear robes.
Oh,
that I don't like bananas.
That's right. No, you hate bananas.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what's the other fun fact about you?
Oh, wait. Now I'm blanking on what the other thing is you always say.
It's the main thing, Tony. It's the...
Oh, wait. No.
If I were describing you to someone else, this is the main thing I would mention. Before the fact that you're a professional drummer.
Is it you did call me subtly handsome that one time?
No, it's not that.
I know. I just
I've
had to work
blocked
that in.
Yeah.
Man,
Wasn't that on the Arden Marine episode?
It was an episode that I was not there for, and so it was weird to listen back to.
Okay, Tony. Cole and Tony. I'm gonna walk you through how Tony's day starts.
Okay.
He
okay,
rises
yes.
and shines.
Yep.
He thinks, "Oh, I hate bananas." He doesn't put on a robe. He goes straight into the shower. Takes a shower. I don't know how long that lasts. We're not that close. And then he gets out, and then immediately, like right after drying off, puts on his shoes and wears them for the rest of the day.
Not immediately after drying off. There are other things put on.
And like
yeah.
shoes first after getting out. Like, are you a shoes first? Is that where you start? Or
I might have gotten it a little bit wrong. But I'm just saying.
You're in the ballpark.
There's Tony's not kicking around his house barefoot eating a banana like the rest of us. He has to wear shoes right away.
Yeah.
You're nodding like this is
my husband's like that.
What's going on?
Wears shoes, and he has like shoes that are just like inside the house shoes only, and then he will like Mr. Rogers, he will change his shoes to leave the house, put on his outside the house shoes, and then when he gets home, takes off his out and switches to home shoes.
What are the home
Smart.
shoes? Are they like slippers?
No, he actually got Instagram ad influenced and ended up buying
Allbirds?
No.
Okay.
I don't know what they are. They're like some kind of knit material. They have like a rubber sole and laces. Like to me, in a house shoe, I don't want to have to deal with laces. I just want to like have like a slipper on. I actually like to wear just like big socks, chunky,
Same.
comfy socks. So he is a house shoe person.
I like it.
Where is he with a robe or a banana?
He's big into bananas. He's a big banana guy, to be honest. He has
Now we're
them in his
50-50.
shakes every day.
Sorry.
Robes, I think he could live without. I like a robe.
I have a robe.
Hey, I got no
have
problem with people
many.
liking robes. I just don't need a robe.
Just not free, as long as it's not hurting you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
No, it's not like it's your forced like uniform at work. So although you should
Not
get
yet.
robes that are like have the little like your logo. That'd be so cute.
Oh my God, you're also a marketing genius, because anyone who's followed along on like the last few months of shows, and I offer a giant apology to them because it's not interesting, but I've just become like obsessed with my robe.
Yes, the white robe.
Yes,
you wear it.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Even my Owen, who you met earlier, I came out of the room like in the evening yesterday, not wearing the robe. I thought I'd give it, and he said, "Mommy, put on your robe."
Oh, yeah.
So
funny. Yeah,
he's
Yeah.
he's it's what he's anyway. Yes, so
I'm team robe.
The robe is the new co-host of the podcast, and we need Allison Rose's new best friend robes. What would you do? Would you quit?
I would if you were like, hey, we're gonna interview you, and I would wear one right now during this, and I would be.
I love all of these. This is all brilliant. Okay,
I should do it.
So emails.
Yep. I'm not good at it.
My thing that I do is I'm really bad at like putting my phone in another room when I don't ever do that. So I check email, and I wake up a lot in the night. So I'll look at my phone. I know it's bad, but I look at my phone.
Yeah.
I'll see an email come in when I'm like half awake, and then I forget about it.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm doing. It's like I see it and process it, and then I move on with my life, but I don't remember to like I need to like communicate back.
It's because
and then it becomes like a big thing when I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about it. What do I say?
see, I think if it were the old days of email, so not too old, but the old days of email where you're doing all your email sitting down at your desk or at your laptop or whatever, then it'd be different. But we're all reading emails on the go.
Like, this is why I wish you still were limited to the total number of hours a month you had access to the internet. I miss that about AOL. Like, do you remember it was like, you had like the 24-hour a month plan, and then like the exciting part would be you'd log in, and then if you were lucky, you would hear the voice that would say, you've got mail. And I'd be like, oh my God, I have an email. And now I'm like, oh. So what is it like to open your inbox and there's nothing? I don't know what that's like. I miss it. Those were good days.
I feel like I am so frequently in my inbox that I've seen nothing there. I mean, except for the like 200,000 emails that I still have that I don't
are just
clear
like
out.
sitting in there. Yeah, they're just waiting. They're just waiting for their time. So,
but enough of digital communication. Let's talk about death.
Yes.
The reason you're here.
My fave.
Okay, so actually, no, let's talk about I know of you via Alie Ward because at the beginning of the pandemic, I think I mentioned to her that I might want to have a grief counselor on or something just thinking sort of as a society, we're all dealing with loss and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you need to have Cole Imperi on. She was on Ologies. It's like everyone's favorite episode. She's amazing. And so that's when I first knew about you.
Okay.
And then I don't know if I reached out to you then or not. Talking about not being on top of your email. But I know that I was aware of you then.
Yeah.
And then again, I thought I should have you on. And then with Alie Ward's dad dying, I saw that you were on the show again. And I was like, I need to listen to that episode, but I'm afraid to listen to that episode. I don't know if Alie told you, my dad is like, he's okay now, but he had a heart attack in August, was in the hospital for a couple weeks.
That's major. Like just seeing your parent. Like,
yeah. So he's like lucky to be alive now, and we don't know how much time left there is, but conceivably there could be years left.
Yes.
Like that's the thing that's so hard with a heart thing.
Yes.
Is that you just don't know.
Right.
But I do feel like he's fading. But anyway, I think I was like, I'm not ready to listen to I want to have you on, but I'm like not. But then today I listened to the episode.
Oh, you did?
Such a beautiful episode.
I was going to ask if you listened. Like,
yes,
you were able to.
I was. I listened to both episodes that you were on. Mm-hmm. The Encore of the original episode. And then the one, like the mini-sode that turned into a full episide after your dad had died. So beautiful. Like I did have tears in my eyes, but it wasn't. I thought it was going to be like
it wasn't like it didn't like make you feel sad or super down.
No,
right? And
it actually was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually was moving and uplifting. It was not. Good. Look, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I bawled through. It was no Sisterhood of the Traveling Plants, and I mean plants. Sisterhood of the thanabotany. Yeah. Okay, so
good. Did a research.
Okay.
Well, thank you for listening, and I love that Alie connected us because Alie is like she's kind of the reason I'm out here in Los Angeles now. And I met her because of the Ologies podcast. I was like one of her first interviews, and just somehow our like friendships. We made a friendship out of that, and I've known her now like half a decade, and I live out here now. So I was like, as I told her the other day, I saw her earlier this week, and I was just like, I moved out here for you, like in a non-creepy way. But
yeah, I mean, good thing that she had a warm reception to it.
So yeah, I mean, and I was like, and specifically, I want to live near you.
Oh, so, I didn't realize. I didn't realize till I listened today how close you guys had become, and how much you and your husband were there for her and Jarrett.
Yeah, which wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't. Like, you know, physically been out here.
Right.
And that's very true for like grief and loss in general. Like it's really hard to try to be there or show up for people when you are physically distanced from each other. Being able to have proximity is so helpful.
Yeah. So I heard, I think it was on Ologies, you were saying that initially you thought that LA was just like a concrete barren wasteland.
I mean, you know, I'm from Cincinnati. Kentucky is my home, and I lived there the last 10 years. And Kentucky, it's a little bit of a different culture, a little bit of a different vibe than the Ohio side of things, because Kentucky and Ohio touch. And I mean, I don't know, like just also being out here, meeting people, and I tell them where I'm from, they have sort of the same kind of relationship or perception of that part of the country that I did from being out there thinking of LA, because it's so far away,
like a
physically.
Cartoony.
It's just all you know is what you've like been told in the media or seen in movies, or how it's represented in TV shows and stuff like that. So it's been really wonderful to move out here and like realize just how much I love Los Angeles. It is it's so wild. There's so much nature. It's beautiful. It's in bloom all the time. Like it's really an incredible city. And I just like the other day I realized like I don't want to leave. Like I don't want to leave. This is home now. It's just Los Angeles.
Oh, that's
is
so
really
great.
Cool. Yeah.
How did you avoid getting an accent?
Well,
you grew up in Cincinnati.
Yeah, definitely. So I do think I have a little bit of a one, just because well, my husband's from West Virginia, and I went to college in West Virginia. And so the Appalachian accent is definitely something that immediate members of my family have more of. But I definitely have an awareness of it. And I think when I'm like speaking sort of like this, I naturally, without even thinking, kind of tone it down. But if I am very relaxed, it's like the end of the day, maybe I had a drink or two, you'll hear a little bit of that Appalachian twang appear. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm aware of, especially being out here in LA, because it's not normal to hear the Appalachian accent. So, but I don't know.
And also, all these years that I've been saying Appalachian,
No,
that's
it's
not.
Appalachian. Don't say Appalachian.
Is that like saying Oregon?
Yeah.
Oh.
So basically,
Tony, did you know? You're from Virginia. Did you know it's Appalachian?
oh, where in Virginia are you from?
I lived in just outside of Richmond for a while.
area. Okay. Yep. Yeah. So, so if you say Appalachian, that
You're an asshole.
no, it just indicates that you're not like from there.
Okay.
Like you're not in the club. So-
I love being
but
in a
it's
club.
Appalachian.
I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna say Appalachian.
Yeah, and they'll be like, okay, she's cool. She's more or less.
Yeah,
She's on
then-
our team.
Okay, so that's my first move. Then once I'm on the team, then what do I do so that they don't like discover that I'm not one of them?
Well, if you're in West Virginia, ask, where can I get the best pepperoni rolls? And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, they'll have lots of opinions about this. And then they'll know that you're truly part of it.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is a pepperoni roll?
So a pepperoni roll is like a traditional West Virginian food, and it was coal miners would take it down into the mines and eat it for like lunch. It was like a food that could sit out for days and you'd be able to eat it. But it's like very much a local food, and sometimes the best pepperoni rolls you can find are like at the local gas stations and things like that, and they're just like delicious. And literally it's like pepperoni, a little bit of cheese in kind of like a white soft roll. And it's just really good. And so a lot of people grow up with that. They appear like at holiday functions and stuff. Like, you'd bring green bean casserole to Thanksgiving or something. There'd be pepperoni rolls. And that's actually something that when my husband went back home for like the first time after we moved here, he bought like a dozen pepperoni rolls and just ate them for days.
Right.
So, yeah. It's one of those like cool local food things.
Tony, have you had a pepperoni roll?
Do they make it into Virginia?
No, not that I'm
At
aware
least
of.
that part of Virginia, maybe.
Yeah, and Allison, I'm from Michigan. I lived in
Oh, where
Virginia
are you
for a
from
while.
in Michigan?
A very, very small town called Edwardsburg. It's right on the Indiana state line. Not the most exciting area.
Oh, okay.
but, yeah.
I have some half sisters that live in Kalamazoo, and then I spent a lot of time in South Bend, Indiana, and
Oh,
Mishawaka.
yeah, that's right by where I lived.
know it.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
it.
South Bend was
Yeah.
like 20 minutes from where I
Yep.
grew up.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought, okay, cool. So,
Oh, what a small. But you didn't know Appalachian.
'tis a small world.
Small world. And you also don't know
Pepperoni rolls. No.
Speaking of food, I don't know if Alie told you what I was making for you guys this morning while she was at my house.
No.
I brought it.
Oh my gosh. Tony, a drum roll or something, please.
Number one, I churned fresh butter for you.
Oh my God.
Okay. Yes. Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Okay, and I put it like in little flour molds, and then
Does that have salt on it?
I
or
picked up
cheese?
a fresh loaf of challah bread from LA Home Farm, so
Oh
that
my
we can have like challah and
Butter.
fresh butter, and you can just like rip it off. So this is my gift,
Thank you.
you guys.
This is so unnecessary, but I hope everyone takes note.
Listen, just always bring food.
Thank you.
Always bring food. That's
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. All right. I mean,
Sorry, I
do
threw
wanna-
you off.
No,
threw you
I
off
know,
your line
but
of-
it's exciting.
Your line of questioning. Sorry.
I do want to ask because I heard on a podcast that, you know what, I'm going to stop saying where I have heard of everything because it's just unnecessary. I'm just going to start that sentence over again. I do want to ask because I learned that you found out that you were Jewish by blood and that is something your family had kept from you.
No, it's not that they kept it. Just
Oh.
was like not. It was like lost from the living generations of family, and it wasn't something that I had discovered until after I'd been a practicing Jew and served on the board of a synagogue and had gone to Israel on a birthright trip.
How did you find out?
Well, through genealogy. So I did like a DNA test eventually years after I had been, like when I was in high school. Okay, so Do you want this like little
Yes.
like sort of story and like
Sure.
identity? So growing up, my mom's side is Catholic, and I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and then came the time to decide where to go to high school. And in Cincinnati is very like German Catholic. So a lot of my mom's side of the family, everybody went to like an all boys Catholic high school or an all girls Catholic high school. And I had been like a religious questioner. Like I remember I got put on the wall one time in grade school, which was like detention, because I had asked, why are we Catholic if Jesus was born a Jew and died a Jew? I was like, make it make sense.
Yeah.
And so I got in trouble. And so I decided that I did not want to go to Catholic high school because I just was like, make it make sense to me. I was really hung up on that. So I chose to go to public high school in Cincinnati. And for whatever reason, I became one of the Jewish kids. And so that was really where I was like deeply exposed and then like part of people's families, and that's when I started observing Shabbat. And I started observing Shabbat on my own because I just thought the tradition was so beautiful, and it just really made sense to me, and I cannot explain it any other way. It does not make sense to me that like a 13-year-old would just be like, I'm going to start lighting the candles and observe Shabbat. But it just like
I
it
need
was
a
like
break from the hectic week. Actually, 13-year-olds do need a break from the hectic week.
Yeah, but it was just like I found something that just made sense to me. And then I went on in college, and one of my degrees is Judaic studies. So I learned to read and write biblical Hebrew, and really deeply studied all of that stuff. And that actually really, a religious studies degree is great to have for anyone that works with death, dying, grief, and loss, because a lot of what people believe about death, where do you go when you die or not, or how you should live your life, is informed by the religious tradition that you hold to or that you grew up around. So if you can become more educated about how religions work and all that stuff, you can kind of come to a deeper understanding of death, dying, grief, loss, and mourning rituals. So then I found a sect of Judaism. It's called Reconstructionist Judaism, which is more the most in line with sort of like how I see things. I served on the board of a Reconstructionist synagogue for like several years. Then I went on a birthright trip when I was in my early 20s. And then I started to do all this DNA stuff to look into my history, and Ashkenazi Jewish came back, and my like immediate living family members were like, what? Had no idea. But I've since connected and found like my Jewish ancestry, where they originated. They're actually from northeastern France, French Jews, and part of why they left to come to the United States was because at the time, Jews in France would be taxed. They would have to pay an extra tax just because they were Jewish. And that was why a lot of them left. So that's what I found.
So
it's
then
wild.
When you found it, were you like, in your mind, is that why you were potentially drawn to Judaism, or do you think that's just coincidence?
No, I don't know. So it's interesting. Like the older I get in my work with death, dying, grief, and loss, I mean, like, okay, so when I started in my career with death, dying, I approached it being like, what is right, what is wrong? And then like, what do I believe? Like, I want to believe what is right. But it was very like, I was just seeking.
When you say right, do you mean like scientifically correct, or do you mean? Okay.
Like I wanted everything
what's
to
real?
be a black and white issue. And I wanted to know like what was like the side I was on. Everything had to be like sort of a side. And this happens for a lot of people who work in my line of work. And then as time goes on, then you realize everything is literally a gray area, and you're never going to find the true black and white, the true yes and no side of things. But there's this idea in Judaism that like, that there's something in my soul that just naturally found it. And the older I get, the more of a comfort that feels to me. And it just makes sense to me because there really was no reason why at such a young age, it's not like I grew up in a Jewish household, you know, why would that have resonated with me so deeply to the point that I pursued it? I don't know. So, yeah.
Right. And so, and what are your parents? I'm going to give you like 3 questions.
Yeah.
What are your parents like? What did they think of this? And then also, do you have siblings?
Yes, I do have siblings. None of my siblings are religious, I think, in any way. Like, you know what I mean? At all. And it's not that I necessarily think I'm religious, but my Jewishness is central to my identity. But I'm a little bit like, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily make you religious. And from a Jewish perspective, that's a little bit different than like in Catholicism, for
Right.
example. It's like, are you a religious Catholic or not? But my parents accept and embrace it. And actually, because I wasn't like born into a practicing Jewish family, I might get a little emotional here, but 2 Christmases ago, okay?
Yeah, no, I celebrate Christmas too.
I love Christmas. I asked my mom and dad to give me a Hebrew name,
Aw.
which is important to me. So in Judaism, when you have a child, they'll usually have like an English name, and then you'll give them like a Hebrew name. Like at birth, like or right after. So obviously I never had that, but it was important to me. And so I asked my parents to do so, and they really thought about it. They and then on Christmas, which I love that they gave it to me on Christmas.
Yeah, I know, that's perfect.
It's perfect for me and my background.
Yeah.
So they took the time to write out and explain, and they reached out to some of their Jewish friends to be like, what do you recommend for our daughter? What do you think? And so that just is so meaningful to me. So I that's where they're at
really
with
sweet.
it. Yeah. It was really meaningful to me. So, and I kind of it's kind of cool to be able to get that as an adult.
Yeah.
I'm their adult child.
Right.
Requesting this.
And they
were
put in the work.
Yes.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you in the birth order?
I have 2 older half sisters, and then I have a younger whole sister, I guess you call it. So yes. So, and then my oldest half sister, she died in 2019. So that's, sad.
Yeah. Really sad.
Yeah.
But I know you've experienced loss, but you felt drawn to this work before you had experienced loss?
Yeah. I mean, I would say so. And I don't really know why. I don't think there is a why for it. But it wasn't until I was actively working in the field that I started to have people from my childhood be like, hey, I just had a memory about you or something. And they would tell me stuff from when I was a little kid that I had no memory of. Mm-hmm. So, for example, my one of my grade school best friends, her mom sent me a card one time. And she was telling me how they remember as a family when the family dog died that I was over there and I was facilitating things. And I was just let's talk about it. What's going on? And I remember did you ever have a play microphone when you were a kid or something a play karaoke machine?
Of course.
Well,
everyone did.
Me and my at the time childhood best friend, we had the microphone and we were interviewing the recently dead dog about where are you right now? Have you seen God yet? And it was just this really nice little childhood memory. And then I would facilitate a funeral and all this. And who knows where I got that, because I didn't have a grandparent die until I was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. There was just something in there, I guess, that was comfortable with it right out the gate. Who knows why? But yeah.
At what age do you remember taking an interest in it?
I guess college, somewhere in there. I remember in high school, I took one of these career tests. Every junior had to take it, and then it gives you back your top 3 occupations. And I remember I got funeral director.
Oh, wow.
And I was so mad. I was how dare they? Because I wanted it to be fashion designer or something fun. And I remember I threw it, I think I threw it away. I was just I reject this. Now looking back, I'm okay, there was probably something actually to that. I just didn't like the idea of my perception at the time of being a funeral director would mean that I have to be quiet and reserved and wear only black clothes and be somber. And I just have never, I don't exude that. I don't think
right.
so.
No.
Yeah, I didn't at the time either. So anyway, college came along and I was pursuing my other degree is in journalism.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go?
I went to Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, and then the University of Cincinnati in Cincinnati, Ohio. So did journalism. And in college, I was kind of all over the place with what I wrote about. I remember one of my big projects was I had to do an investigative journalism piece, and I chose telephone poles to write about. I was going to get
riveting.
I was going to get listen. I was going to get to the bottom.
You
of
mean
telephone poles, utility poles?
Right. Okay.
I don't
census.
Yeah, and so I don't understand at 20 years old why I was I'm coming for you. Like, that's what I think. Like, my classmates were doing way more interesting things. Well, anyway, I ended up learning about like this stuff called, they use these things at the base of the poles. It looks like black stuff sometimes. It's like a creosote, and they use other things, and it actually leaches into the ground around there, and it's like not healthy. So anyway, I started to like call these like utility companies to see if I could interview somebody, and then they started hanging up on me.
Oh, because you're Aaron Brockoviching them.
I was. And so I ended up not being able to like get actual sources because the local utility companies had like blocked my stuff. So that was a taste of like, journalism.
Yeah.
It was like this. And then let's see what else I do in college. I did roller derby throughout.
So wait
college.
though, did you doggedly pursue the black stuff on the bottom of the pole thing, or did you let it go?
Well,
no
I mean,
judgment if you let it go.
Well, I let it go.
Okay.
I let it go because the semester was ending. And I just needed to turn the paper in. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to get into an argument with like Big Oil or whatever.
No.
I'm like, that's where it's going to end up. So,
right.
Yeah, I just
that's
decided
fascinating.
to leave that
You also
behind.
did roller derby.
Yep, did roller derby for several years. And I actually didn't like when I graduated from college, I didn't walk at college. I didn't do the big ceremony. And then instead, my roller derby league had a graduation ceremony. So I skated in my little robe.
Oh,
and it was the cutest.
That's super cute.
Yeah, and at the time, my husband was a ref for our league, which was
You guys were already together?
Yeah. I met him like the second week of college. I was 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
So we will be together 20 years this year.
Wow.
Married 17, 16. It'll be something like that. 16, 17 years. I don't know. So, yeah.
And so from the time have you been together ever since, from the time you met? Like, you never broke up?
No.
Look at that.
I know. Isn't that weird?
That's really sweet.
Because I never thought of myself as that. I envisioned myself being this. I really wanted to sample.
The field?
Yeah. Like, I really, like, that was what I saw for myself. I saw for myself settling down maybe when I was like 40. And, you know, the second week of college or something, I met Victor, my now husband. And I remember when I met him, this little voice was like, you're going to marry this guy. I will never forget it. And then I did. And I was, you know, it was a bummer because I was like, man, I'm not going to get to like.
Yeah. Taste the wares.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, so in college, I mean, there wasn't anything necessarily death specific, I guess. I mean, I took some classes that were on the subject matter.
What?
Like just death and dying classes, and then a lot of the religious studies classes talk about death because of how it's referenced in biblical texts and like.
I feel like there were no death and dying classes offered at my college.
Where did you go?
Pomona College.
Okay.
It's one of the Claremonts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, death
Like what discipline were they in?
a lot of times death and dying classes are housed either under psychology departments or religious studies departments.
You know what? They're in psychology. There probably was a class like that. Yeah.
Sometimes they are cataloged under like philosophy as well.
Okay. I bet there was some stuff. I'm just not remembering. Yeah.
Death kind of affects everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then after college, that was when, like, immediately, like, I did like an internship at a crematory, a funeral home, a cemetery, just like by choice. Mm-hmm. Just decided to just reach out and do this because I had a job right out of college that was not death related.
What was it?
I worked for an architecture and engineering firm in their prisons and barracks division. So I actually had for a time security clearance onto some local military bases, and I was involved with like trying to get the government contracts so that we could build barracks. And then that was a job that I literally on a Friday was like, bye, and I walked out. And that was when I started working for myself, and that was in 2007. And here I am today.
What was it about that job that didn't appeal to you? And you should know something about me that hasn't come up recently, but a long time ago, I announced architects are assholes. They're megalomaniacs. Everyone knows this. And everyone was like, no, they push. Actually, not everyone pushed back because this was one of my hot takes, my original hot takes that I'm known for. I'm not known for hot takes. But I remember on Twitter, there are people who were like, I work with architects, or I am an architect, and you're absolutely right. But anyway, was it working with architects that made you have to leave?
Yes. Yeah, so not all of them. Like, I'm still in touch and friends with...
Elise Keaton was great.
Like, several that I worked with. But at the time... So, this was kind of... I don't know if this is, like, oversharing. But It probably is, but I will talk about
There's
it.
no such thing.
Are we okay? I would like to talk about infertility.
I did IVF.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about this.
Yeah, I've talked about it a lot.
So imagine this: I get married at 22 years old. I'd already been with my husband for 4 years, and I got married on New Year's Eve, and then like I remember I stopped taking the birth control pill because I hated it. It just never felt good, and I was like, I'm married, so if I get pregnant, no one can say I'm sinning. And I just was like, that was my decision making process. Well, 21 days later, I was 20 pounds heavier, and I had lost a ton of my hair. It had just fallen out. And turns out the birth control was treating a hormonal disorder that I had that we didn't realize because I had been put on it basically as soon as you hit puberty. So when I went off of the pill, my body just exploded. It was the worst year of it was one of the worst years because it's we just got married and everyone was like, oh, it's going to be so great.
Yeah.
And I'm balding and expanding rapidly. It was just so uncomfortable. So anyway, found out I was infertile. Things were just not going to work. And it's so interesting because we hadn't yet gotten to a point where we were like, do we want to have kids? When do we want to have them? That was never even discussed yet. So it's not for me, I wasn't navigating the loss of oh man, we were going to try to have a family right away. We hadn't even talked about it. So it's we lost this thing that we hadn't even yet claimed for ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up having to have this surgery on my ovaries that they no longer do.
Did you have endometriomas?
No,
Okay.
I don't have that. Although I think one of my sisters does. I had this thing done called ovarian drilling, which is what it sounds like. And they don't do it anymore. So that definitely, I think, made sure we're going to be infertile.
Yeah.
And I was 22 going through this. So that happened.
What is ovarian drilling supposed to do?
Well, so they laser, they basically burn holes all over your ovaries. And what that does is it affects the way that your ovaries produce hormones. That's what I was told. Also, if I was having that surgery today, I would have approached it totally and asked better. I mean, I was 22 years old, just got married. I mean, I didn't know. I was just okay, sure, I'll have it.
Right.
So anyway, so this was happening. And then at work where I was at this architecture company, and because I got married, my husband and I got married pretty quickly because we had no money. So we got engaged in October, and then we just got married in my parents' living room on New Year's Eve. And we had my dad marry us. I mean, because it was cheap. It was $35 to get my dad licensed to marry us. And so I was like, great, we'll do that. Well, the rumor started at work that the only reason I was getting married was because I was pregnant. And at the time that this started spreading around the office, I was actively finding out that I was infertile. I had gained all this weight. So people were like, she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And then some time passed and there was obviously no baby. And then people were like, she got an abortion. And that started spreading in the office. And I did not have the skills to be able to cope with that. I reached out to my boss. I told him what was going on. And he was like, suck it up. You're young. You're trying to make it. You're just going to have to let them talk. But it was really wrecking me, living in, having that environment. So it all came to a head. And then I remember I called my husband and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Because I got in the elevator and this architect guy was like, so when's the baby due? Knowing that there was no baby. And I was just like, So I walked out. I just literally walked out. It was 3:15 and I was like, bye. I don't regret it.
Yeah, no, sounds like the right move.
Yeah. So that's my architecture story.
Now I know. So I found out I have endometriosis, and endometriomas are the name of the cysts that they're filled with blood, and it's a fun thing. Yeah. But anyway, I had those on my ovaries. And at the time, the surgery they recommend is to go in and remove them. And now apparently they wouldn't. Now they just leave them. But I didn't know see, the thing with endometriosis is they can't diagnose it 100% until they go in.
Until they're in, yeah.
So what they saw there was some kind of mass situation going on, and my CA-125, which is a cancer marker, was elevated. So there was this, we have to go in to make sure it's not an oncologist did the surgery, a gynecological oncologist. We have to make sure it's not cancer. So
scary.
Yeah.
It's so scary when like this system of yours is just like in question.
Yes, totally. Yeah, like I signed away, I might wake up from the surgery with no uterus. And the funny thing is that when I did wake up from surgery, I remember they were trying to tell me, like, good news, it was just endometriosis, not cancer. And that was the first time I'd ever had general anesthesia. And I just remember thinking, like, I know that at one point I cared, but right now I do. It was like, in my mind, it was like I had received an email and I'll go read it later. Like, I was so out of it. But anyway, I found out then when we ended up, going to the fertility, when I thought that I'd spent my whole life trying not to get pregnant, thinking, I mean, I like really bought in to all the sex education. So I was just like, if there's even like a penis near you that doesn't have a condom on it, you can get pregnant from like the pre-ejaculate and da-da-da. And I mean, I had like taken the morning after pill just almost prophylactically when I didn't need to, I was just like, I just want to be extra safe. So I was so sure that I would get pregnant quickly. In fact, people had recommended freezing my eggs, like in a sort of like before we knew what was going on with my body, but just like, a lot of women your age are doing it. And I was just like,
save them while they're good. Right?
Yeah, it's $10,000. It sounds invasive. I don't want to worry about that. So I just like put my head in the sand. And then I was like incredibly infertile. And it turns out that surgery had removed like a ton of my eggs.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, because they're removing part of your ovary. Oh, so they take eggs with it. And they had not told me that at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, but was that like it probably wasn't explained to you in those explicit terms?
Not at all.
Like, tissue was removed from whatever, but that doesn't say the tissue attached to all these eggs was removed.
No, not at all. But, and then I play it back and I think, well, I wonder if at the time they would have been like, it's more important that we make sure you don't have cancer. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like there was this like feeling of urgency at the time.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so I share the infertile situation.
Yeah. It's a wild experience.
And another, no, go ahead.
Yeah. It's a wild experience. It's also really common and everyone has a different like entry point into it, a different exit point. And it's so interesting. Usually like in the medical world, the way that information is told to you about fertility can be very different depending on what part of the country you're in and like different regulations
how do you mean?
And stuff. Well, it's like, okay, so one of the reasons I was really excited to move out to Los Angeles, for example, is because there's more healthcare options than like where I moved from. A lot of the hospitals are like Catholic-based hospitals. So they have regulations and rules on certain medical procedures, which affects the options that are presented to people, especially with like infertility related stuff. Specifically because for example, I had a DNC at one point, but it wasn't which is like an abortion, right? But it wasn't that. But I would not have been able to have that at certain periods of time, depending on where laws were in the area that I was.
And it is not getting better in certain areas.
No. So, yeah.
Yeah. I want to quickly talk to you guys about Little Spoon. Little Spoon is a sponsor of Allison Rosen, his junior best friend. They are a one-stop shop for healthy, easy mealtime and snack time for your baby, toddler, and big kid delivered right to your door. Yes, you heard that right. You can have Little Spoon in your life for years to make mealtime healthy, tasty, and easy. It's time-saving and convenient without compromise. So Little Spoon delivers baby blends. They deliver biteables, which are transition to table early finger foods that are cut to size. They have these plates. So they're these great plates with like these little, it's like one of those plates that has the little different compartments or divisions. And it's free of junk. It tastes amazing. There's hidden veggies in like the mac and cheese, the chicken nuggets, and they have, pot stickers, gnocchi. And it's just a great meal. It's so easy. They have smoothies. We have a bunch of this in our freezer right now. And it's just so nice to have it there for when you need it. And it's delicious. I've tasted all of it. When I said it's for your baby, toddler, and big kid, I was tempted to say, and also your even bigger kid if you're like me and you're, interested in stuff that comes ready to go and it looks delicious. And it all comes right to your door. It's flexible. It's easy. Everything stores right in the fridge and freezer. You pick the menu, change up what you order every time. The price is right. The quality is unmatched. I love it. My kids love it. The grandparents love it. A huge win, win, win for my family, and it can be for yours. Make this year's chaos a little more manageable with time-saving, delicious, and healthy meals and snacks your kids will love. Go to littlespoon.com/BFF and enter our code BFF at checkout to get 30% off your first Little Spoon order. That's Little Spoon, LITTLESPOON.com/BFF and enter our code BFF for 30% off at checkout. What I was going to say was another thing we have in common is I know, so I take questions from listeners and we'll get to them later, but I have to bump this one up to the top. You have a fear of cicadas flying into your vagina?
Yes.
Because I have a fear of insects in my orifices too.
I know that like the physics of that don't make sense. My brain does like rejects it. My brain sees it happening.
Yeah. No, we have openings. Yeah. They're vulnerable. And I don't want an insect to breach it. And that's really like I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out like why.
But you guys don't get cicadas out here.
No,
thank God. That's also one I was so glad to move out here. I was like, there's gonna be no cicadas.
How big are cicadas?
They're like I mean, they're substantial.
Tampon size.
When you hold them, they have a weight to them. Okay. Like it's not like a lightweight bug. Like it's a bug that could like carry loads of stuff and labor. It's like a laboring type of insect.
Okay.
So yeah, they're pretty intense, and their noises can be really scary. And then like the thing is, a cicada, like if it got up under your skirt or something, it would scream. First of all, which is also traumatizing to have an insect like up in your dress or something, retching.
Screaming.
Yes. So.
Have you had a close call or anything?
Yes.
Oh God. Okay. Do tell, please.
I was 21 years old, and we had one of our big cicada years in Cincinnati. And I was going to the gynecologist. And this was in Montgomery, Ohio, which is like a northeastern part of Cincinnati. And that area has a really huge concentration of cicadas that come up out of the ground, I think the 17-year cycle. And literally, it was centered around where this medical office was. It was like one of the worst spots in Cincinnati. And I was 21 years old. And so I mean, it was so bad, like pulling into the parking lot, I had dozens of these cicadas on my windshield. They were like crawling all up the car. I mean, LA people don't know about this experience. It is crazy, but it was normal to me because it happened.
Pepperoni rolls,
growing
cicadas.
Up. Yeah. So I remember sitting in the parking lot, and I had this cute little, at the time, this was like 2003-04.
Mini backpack?
This like boho. Oh my God, I love mini backpacks.
They're back.
Like the boho kind of style where you were like lace skirts that were like low rise, but like lace skirts. I had one of those on. And I was like, I gotta go into this gynecology office. So I remember I just had to grab my bag, and I opened the car door, and I forced myself out, and they...
So that's what they sound like?
They were it's an awful sound deeply. So I started running, and these bugs were on me, and this had been so bad that there were staff like in the little entry to the gynecology office that opened the door for you. They pulled me in.
Oh my God.
And they started beating the bugs off of me.
This is like awful.
I mean, it was, and I was crying. Like my body, like you just react and you're just like, bitch, we don't know what to do. Cry. Like that was just what I did. Yeah. So I was just like crying, and then I had to go in and have like a pap smear. I was so like, my
clenched.
body was like,
right.
Batting the hatches. It was very painful. That pap smear was
oh my God. I'm surprised everyone didn't come in clenched.
It was, I mean, I think they did. It was a very stressful period of time. Not a good location for a gynecological office.
They should have thought about that.
And I mean, that's not what Cincinnati is like all the time. But, every 13-year, we have a 17-year cicada cycle that's really bad. So,
Tony,
it was rough.
What's your relationship with these bugs?
Virginia has, Michigan has some in some parts, but I don't think you guys don't get that many. You don't get as many
I don't think I ever experienced it.
Yeah, it's not good. Alie was super into the cicadas, and she actually ended up.
Her relationship with bugs is suspect.
I mean, someone's gotta.
Oh,
she's
a bug. Girl likes bugs and stuff?
Yes. Yes. So anyway, Alie she came to my house in Kentucky in May this last year, and the year before that, and we got to see the cicadas together. And I did that just because she was my friend. I didn't like it, but I did it for her.
I was going to say, like, did you see them through new eyes or anything?
I mean, I saw them through the eyes of, like, my friend would like this.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, I was like, okay, she's really my friend.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. She's constantly posting, like, a praying mantis, I feel like, is almost like a ladybug or a butterfly where we're just, like, we compartmentalize. But she'll just have, like, a big old spider on her hand, or
I think really
bugs on her body.
Cicadas upset me. Millipedes upset me. Like just looking at them. But there's some bugs that I'm fine with. Like I don't like flies. They don't bother me.
What about a mosquito?
You guys really don't have mosquitoes out here. It's so awesome. It is awesome.
Oh, but we do.
But I don't think I got one.
Okay.
No, it's like
I don't have that problem either. I like
just my studio.
I haven't been bitten.
I don't have any right now, but.
But it only happened in like the last few years.
Yes,
like they
because
literally didn't used to be here.
I had heard that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alie, I'm sure could do a whole episode on it. There's
info.
some mosquito, I forget the name of it, that's not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it got here.
Yeah. Because like 20 years ago, there were like literally none, but now they're like starting to grow every year, but just recent. So this is kind of interesting, but it's really nice. You guys have less scary bugs for me. So it's good.
How do you feel about termites?
Well, that's why all the houses in LA have the tenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the
we
stripes,
have to do that, yeah.
Because of the termites they're just a different ball game out here, I guess.
Yeah.
So
ants?
I'm cool with ants.
Really?
They don't like upset me like a cicada does. Yeah. I don't worry about them getting in my vagina.
I do.
So I think that's how I classify bugs: fear of getting in my vagina or not.
If it's creepy crawly and uninvited, I'm worried it's going in my vagina and also my butt.
Yeah.
How do you feel about mice?
Mice? I haven't had a lot of mice experience to be honest. I think they're cute.
Okay, what about if there's if you have a mouse problem in your apartment or house?
Is this the rest of the episode?
Yeah,
I've never had that, so I don't know. I feel like that's something you have to experience and then it changes your relationship to it.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Just real fast, because the listeners have heard it. When I was in New York, we did have a mouse problem, and I couldn't figure out why I was afraid, why it bothered me so much, because I could not have peace of mind for all the months that it continued. We tried to handle it ourselves. Like, we bought those things that are supposed to emit a high-pitched, probably cicada-like noise that they do. My friend had told me those don't do anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to try it anyway. Finally, we called an exterminator, and he, put steel wool in all the holes, and then the problem was over, and I was like, we should have done this immediately. Whatever. But anyway, I was trying to figure out, they're little mammals. People keep them as pets. I'm not afraid of them in a pet store. Why is it like eating away at my peace of mind in my apartment? And I decided probably because I'm afraid they're going to climb up my butt.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. We're afraid of unwelcome entrances.
Right. Okay, let's get into some of the thanatology stuff, though.
Sure.
So you started interning at a crematorium, at did you say funeral home?
A funeral home, and then I did a little rotation with a cemetery. Yes.
Did you all at that point were you like, I am drawn to this, I want to find out? What was going through your mind when you opted to do those internships?
I just remember being like, I should be more educated about this, how it actually, how does all this stuff happen?
But what do you think was behind that?
I don't know, honestly. I look back at it and I'm like, what were you doing in your life? That I was just as a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old. I don't know. It just drew me because I have never been I'm not a horror person. I don't like to be scared. I don't like to choose things to scare me. I don't like to be scared.
Okay.
And I don't like to be upset. I don't like to be sad. But I guess it was more just a general, a very real, genuine interest in just death. I was interested in the business of death in the United States in particular. And then I became really interested. Now my work, I am predominantly interested in and focused on grief. But in order to get to the grief, I really needed to have a really solid understanding of the dying and the death. And so that's kind of, I think, the thematic structure of how my career has progressed. So I started with death, what's a dead body like, all this stuff. And then I did a yoga teacher training that was 6 months. and we had a cadaver lab as part of our training.
Oh, wow. It's part of a yoga teacher training.
Yeah, it was a good one. And the reason we did that was because if you're having people come into your classroom and you're asking them to move their bodies in ways, you need to be able to understand what you're asking them to do to their organs. Like where the pressure is going.
So it was like an anatomy lesson.
Like so we were with a whole, it was a 12 hours total with a cadaver, seeing the body and like seeing it up close. And, the purpose of yoga is to become more comfortable with your own death.
Which this
is why you practice
I
that?
learned 6 hours ago listening to you
Yeah.
on, what is the name of that podcast? The Art is Green. Shelby?
Oh, the grief podcast.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. I forgot it. Yeah.
I'm forgetting the name of it. Carrying on, or maybe. Anyway,
I can't think of it now that you're talking
we'll
about
figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what? If they Google Cole Imperi,
It'll be one of the ones that pops up.
Yeah, in the podcast app, it'll be one of the ones that pops up. Yeah.
Yeah. So in here, I thought that like, okay, yoga, I'm going to get away from the death stuff. So
Right.
but I was really just getting more into it.
Yeah.
Turns out life is funny like that. But yeah, so I did that, and then I started to volunteer at a hospice, and I led death cafes. And then
What's a death cafe?
So a death cafe is a nonprofit organization that has a template that you can pick up and run within your own local community. It's a death cafe is like an unstructured time where people can come and you're just facilitating an open space to like chit chat about death, dying, grief, and loss. And then usually you have like snacks afterwards. A lot of times libraries host them.
So is it kind of like a support group but less structured?
Yeah, and you have people that come that are actively grieving, and then you have people that come that are like just really interested. Like they're 18 years old and they're like, I might want to be a funeral director. I'll go to a death cafe. So I would facilitate those. And then I was also working as a death companion in my local community.
Which means what?
So have you heard of death midwives?
I've heard of death
companions, death doulas,
yes.
death companion. Then there's also terms that are specific to cultural and ethnic groups, but it's the same function. It's like you have a community member. They're not a doctor. They're not a funeral director. They're not an attorney. They just know like what to do when it comes to death and dying. So those kind of roles exist everywhere and have forever. But I was doing that kind of like from a non-religious, secular approach.
Is there training for that, or is it something you just kind of intuited?
There is, but I will say that originally with the role of like being a death companion or like in Judaism, we have something called the Chavra Kadisha, which is like when a Jewish person dies and they're like observant, we have a group of Jews that are trained specifically on the end of life rituals, like that know what to do when it comes to death and dying. And these people are not funeral directors. They're not doctors. They're not like, they're there to just uphold the rituals belonging to the community. So typically that function has been passed down person to person, like within a family group, or like if you're Christian and your church has had a bereavement committee, like those people actually hold like the what do we do when it comes to death and dying traditions. In recent years in the United States, the death doula movement is following what Americans do. We like figure out how to make money off of it basically. And then we start to talk about how do we regulate it and how do we like put laws on top of it. So that's actively happening right now as this sort of like new profession grows. Now there's so many more options to like get training and education from someone that you pay money to, but is maybe not part of your actual hometown community or your religious group or whatever it might be. So I was just doing that. It just came very natural to me. And part of why I think that happened was because I had the experience in a crematory, in a funeral home, in a cemetery, and also like simultaneously. So when I quit that job, I was like, well, I guess I work for myself full time now. And so I had a journalism degree. So I knew how to write. I knew how to design. I had all the design software. And so I started a consulting firm, basically like business consulting, but with a strong marketing bent. And
the show robes.
yeah. And with like literally, I cannot tell you how this happened, but I just started getting clients that were in or around death, dying, grief, and loss. So I gained experience through understanding their businesses and like their challenges. I continued to work on my own credentials. So I became a certified crematory operator. I've cremated both humans and animals, but I have never been full-time employed, like at a funeral home. I'm also not a licensed funeral director or embalmer. I have been in more funeral homes than I can count because also for like half a decade I was teaching faculty for one of the largest deathcare associations, I guess globally. And so I would travel the United States with my husband, and we would give these, like, we would certify people to become certified crematory operators with a whole other team of people. So there was like a good 10 years there where like we were on the road a lot. We were teaching and working with funeral directors. I was consulting with businesses in and outside the United States. I started speaking at funeral conferences about like marketing and about like how to have perhaps a messaging that resonates better with the public. I am very pro funeral director because these are people that have this very specific training. They know the laws. This is one of the issues with the death doula movement right now is you have a lot of people that are entering this work who are not educated that it's a felony to, like, if somebody complains about you and you're doing something that's a little bit like under the jurisdiction of a funeral director, it's a felony. And I don't want to see these people like who are in this for good, not understanding because they took a training program that is not teaching them about the boundaries of where the work should be and not be.
Just out of curiosity, can you give me an example of something that is under the jurisdiction of the funeral director that a death doula might do?
Well, it varies. So in the United States, funeral service is regulated at, it can be up to 4 different levels: city, county, state, and federal. So your local funeral director is going to know what those specific rules and regulations are. And the other thing about funeral service is it's not just like the funeral home. Like usually like these people have relationships with your local coroner or your medical examiner. And the other challenge with funeral service in the US is that the baseline qualifications to be a funeral director can be very different. Like in the state of Colorado, technically you don't need anything to open a funeral home. In Kentucky, actually, I don't want to say this, but there's some states where you just need a high school diploma to start working as a funeral director. There are other states like Ohio, you have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree, I think, plus an apprenticeship. So there can be huge variations in like the training that you go under. But
do research before you choose where to die, people.
It can make a difference. And like, some states have requirements, like if you want to be buried like in Texas, but you die in Kentucky, so we need to move your body across state lines. Some states will have requirements on what kind of state your body needs to be to come in and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, to your question about like what's an example?
Yeah.
So there have been instances where some states have more sort of requirements around like what is a funeral home, what activities happen in a building that is a funeral home. And so if you are a good-hearted person that just wants to provide different options for your community, and then you're in your home, and then you have somebody bring dead mom to your house, and then you're going to help prepare the body maybe, for example, and maybe have a funeral there, or I don't know, the state or somebody may be like, wait a minute.
So
are you a funeral home? Do you have like, because funeral homes have to meet, there's like all kinds of standards, cleanliness standards, and your bodily fluids and stuff like that.
Is it fair to say that most of these boundaries have to do with the fact that there's a dead body?
Yeah.
It's around the
Well, because when you die, the laws around you change. When you are dead, you become basically like quasi-property. So property law is actually what is like utilized to sort of determine your stuff. And like possession is 9 tenths of the law.
Yeah.
I'm keeping grandma. I don't know. So anyway, this is also why I love deathcare, funeral service, because it's really interesting to me. We are mixing federal, state, city, and county rules and regulations and laws that's informed by the local, communities a lot of the times. Plus, with business capitalism, right? Like in the United States, it's legal to open a funeral home and like make a living from that. There are some countries in the world where funeral stuff is provided by the government. It's like a government service, and it's not something on the free market. You cannot open a funeral business. So that's also different here in the U.S. But it was just really interesting. Like you have all these really unique, and then on top of that, you got like dead people and grief thrown in the mix. And it really can create some really, really complicated situations, challenges. It's really interesting stuff.
I think there's this idea that aspects of, and this is not, it sounds like I'm saying this is what I think and I'm pinning it on someone else. I'm not. I'm just, I have thankfully not had to plan a funeral yet or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Not gone shopping for ways to dispose of the body or anything like that. But, you know, you hear people say that like, oh, they try to upsell you or the funeral business can be predatory or all like, what do you think of all that?
Yeah. I mean, just like any other business, just like, yes, absolutely. There are absolutely aspects of that within funeral service. Part of what upsets me is, this is my like hot take here. So
hot as my architect take.
Anytime that you work with death or grief, the public, some part of the public tends to have this idea that, well, you should do this for free or for very little money. And handling dead people and managing grief and staying legally compliant and having a safe business and running a staff, like whatever, that's a lot of skill. And so as a result, what's happened over the years is the public has been like I have one of my former students, he's like a third generation funeral director, and he just had gotten married and had kids, and he was running the funeral home, and he was literally like never home. He couldn't be because he was trying to like serve his community that he grew up in and around. And I don't know, they were able to save up enough money to put like a little pool in their backyard. Annihilated by the community. How dare this funeral director?
Oh, wow.
Look at him. He's made all this money off of our backs.
Grief. Yeah.
This guy was in debt. This guy was just trying, like, there was no abuse that was happening, but this is like a unique pressure that happens to a lot of people that work with death and dying. The pressure to be poor, the pressure to not be doing better than us, kind of a thing.
Right.
And it's really wild to watch that, because to me, if you're having people deal with grief and death, they should be well paid. They should have comfortable lives. Why should they have to deal with some of this really difficult vicarious trauma at work all the time? And then you want them to go home and not be able to have like a decent minivan for the family or something.
That's so interesting.
But they're really scrutinized. So anyway, but I'm talking a lot about like the independently owned, the family owned funeral homes. There is a very large conglomerate in the United States that owns, I think now it's like 80% of all funeral homes. And it's like any other business. It's like any other industry. When you, like, there's systems in place that can work really well. But when you have a big systems are typically what cause someone's getting oppressed somewhere and someone's getting, cannibalized by that. So I think that when it comes to funeral service in the U.S., I think all of it is true. Like, there are serious problems in areas that need to be improved, but also, like, it's really valuable work. It's really important work, and most people wouldn't want to do it. So
that's so interesting, though. I never really thought about that automatic feeling of, like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I am grieving. And it like adds insult to injury that I have to like pay for, like when my dog died and we got they did a clay paw, I opted for the clay paw, and then I got like the invoice for the clay paw thing, and I was just like, really? That's so expensive. I hadn't really questioned that. I mean, I also didn't like, journal about it for 6 days or something, but I mean, it was just like a passing thought, but I really did have that feeling of like, how predatory of them to take advantage of what, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. But so I feel like that's also like, that is tickling your grief. You know what I mean? Because if you are not grieving if you bought a customized ceramic thing,
Right. I would expect
and we're not, you'd be like, yeah, I need to pay for that, right? But it's,
Totally.
and that's what makes it really extra challenging to work with death, dying, grief, and loss in a public facing way, is because grief doesn't necessarily, it affects the way that you like make decisions.
Yeah.
And, I mean, science shows us this. So it's a really tricky work. And that's why the burnout rate is so high. There's a lot of alcoholism and addiction issues within funeral service. You know, I think obviously like a result, I mean, these people are dealing with really awful, terrible things that happen. And then on top of that, live under the pressure of like, you don't want to have a new car around town, especially if it's a small town, because then people are going to be like, you got that off of all of our, you know, dead people or whatever. And it's just, it's hard. So
At the crematorium, funeral house, all those things, was there anything that you found scary, icky, upsetting?
no.
And at the
Like,
time,
literally,
were you
no.
like, I have a superpower. I am not, you know, I'm not like bumped by these things that most people are afraid of.
No, because I've also found that, like, I mean, funeral homes are workplaces. And they're like,
I said funeral house. I'm like, that doesn't
I mean,
sound
it's the
right.
same
As it
thing.
came,
It's
as
the
it came
same
out of
thing.
my
I know
mouth,
what you
though, it
meant.
felt wrong.
Yeah, I mean, they're all like workplaces, and I think most people's experience with a funeral home is either you're there crying and upset, or it's what you see on TV. And what we see on TV is not really depicting funeral homes as like, this is just my basic workplace. Like, you know what I mean? Like, here's the stack of papers on my desk. I got to process.
Right. No, it's dramatized.
But I've been in more funeral homes than I can count in like 3 countries or something like that. And everyone that I've ever been in is like great. They're organized. They have systems. Like, everything is in its place. I've seen a lot of dead people.
And that you totally A-okay with that?
Yeah, it really. Have you ever been around a dead person before?
My grandfather had an open casket.
Okay, so
And
but were you ever with a dead person before they were like at their funeral, like when they were just like
No, I don't think
dead
so.
at home or dead in bed or
No, I've seen
That's
dead
scary, yeah.
pets, but and I was very upset by it because they were my pets,
Right.
But no, I've never. The only dead body I've seen was my grandfather, like at his funeral.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of. Yeah, no, I haven't.
Yeah, so I will say that like the experience of being with someone that has recently died, I think that there's something in your body, like biologically, that is hardwired into us to just like, you just know.
Like, you know how to be.
Yeah. And anybody that I've ever worked with or all these like funeral homes I've toured, especially if I've like had to go through a space where there's like an embalming or something that is just finished up or something, there's only ever been like the absolute most respect demonstrated. And like I would we'd often say, hello, Mrs. whatever their name is, walking by, because to me they're still a person and they can't the dead are a vulnerable population because they don't get a say anymore. And I think that I have so much respect for that. But no, it's not scary to be around it. It's very natural. And especially the type of natural that you only see when you are with someone who's recently died. It's very beautiful. And like, part of why I love my work is because I can only be fully present to it. It's really like, I literally have never been around a dead person and been like, I wonder if I've gotten any comments on that TikTok. You know what I mean? And like thinking of that kind of stuff is like not being in the here and now. And so I think that's why I've been able to maybe like last in my career, because I get this medicine of just the opportunity to be present in my current life. And like even talking to you right now about this, like I am fully here because we're talking about something that's important. So yeah, it's not scary. And I don't believe, like, I've never seen a ghost. I kind of wish I had so that I could like understand what people are talking about to have that experience. But I don't, I've never like seen that stuff, and no one's ever like ghosted me except in real life while they're living. So
I always think that like all of that stuff is scary, quote unquote, when it's like depersonalized and when it's just conceptual, like the idea of dead bodies. But when it's your loved one, then it's like just your loved one.
Yeah.
It's not, it's sad, but it's not scary anymore.
Right. A lot of times the things that we think are scary actually are just internal. They have nothing to do with what's happening out there. Like seeing, like, honestly, we are the thing to be afraid of ourselves. Yeah. That's where we should, that's where a lot of the fear actually comes from. So,
on one the other podcast I do, Childish, which is a parenting-ish podcast with Greg Fitzsimmons, he was talking about trying to get to, because his mom is older and has been having some health issues, and like trying to get to a place where instead of wringing his hands and feeling anguish over death, he's just going to look at it like it's something we all do, it's natural. And when she dies, instead of being so sad, it's just like, what a great life she was able to lead. And I've, come up against this notion of this is how we're going to process death before, this idea of like, what if we didn't have to feel sad about it? And I always think like, that would be wonderful. I don't know if it's possible, but like, where are you with all that? Like, how much is there a way to avoid grief?
No. And even like being more educated about it, it's like there's like two different buckets. Like you have, like you can learn more about death, dying, grief, and loss, and research shows that will actually like reduce your death anxiety, and it can help make the mechanics of things you might experience smoother, maybe not easier, but smoother.
Right, because you're not surprised that you're feeling it.
Yeah, and then the other bucket is like the grief. You cannot educate yourself out of that. You cannot talk yourself out of that. Like, period. And that's a question I get asked a lot. They're like, oh my God. And actually this happened like when my sister died. I had multiple people be like, oh, I'm so sorry your sister died, but like you're probably going to grieve like so easy because you're what. And I was like, don't talk to me. I was like, I am hurting
entirely.
So truly, your grief it's really important to have a good relationship with your grief. Just because you have like, you're sad or you even feel hopeless or despair, you can also experience joy at the same time. And it's okay. It's okay to have really happiness, good things happening at the same time that there's bad or whatever you want to call it. It's just really important to stay connected to your grief. So that way you can keep it moving so that it doesn't become like stagnant and start to like rot and fester. You want to give it light and sunlight. And
so in your experience or in your knowledge, like there is no way to avoid grief. Like for anyone out there who's like, I'm going to not do all that, like you're fooling yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Grief. So one of the most common pieces of incorrect information that is still taught is that grief is an emotion. It is not. Grief itself is, you cannot feel grief. You can feel sad, which might be part of your grief response. You can feel happy. You can feel all these things. But grief is not an emotion. And there's actually 6 categories of like symptoms or signs that a person will have when the grief process starts. Social, cognitive, behavioral, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Some people will favor a category. This is why, have you ever known someone that didn't cry when someone died? Okay. Because they're just not having a lot of stuff in the emotional category.
And in my mind, I always justify it as like, oh, they're going to do that when they get home or something.
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
I mean, some people.
I know some people are like, I haven't cried in 3 years.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that they're not grieving. It just means that maybe they're favoring like spiritual symptoms and they're like really having like an existential crisis and questioning God or like, why are we here? I have a lot of physical symptoms when my grief is active. So for me, like I will bloat. Like, and just hold it for days and days and not even know why. Dry lips has been a documented like sign.
I become more beautiful. It's weird.
Oh,
yeah, it's strange.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
I guess that's physical.
So with grief, I think it's important to know like everyone does it, and that's why like usually in a single family, people do not grieve identically. like in the same way. And this is a source of family conflict a lot of times, because one sister will be like, you're not even crying. You know, you're so disrespectful. But it makes sense that within a family unit, you have somebody who's maybe more emotional, and the other family grows up and develops in response to that. So perhaps they have learned to sort of mitigate the emotional side, and then as a result, they favor other stuff. So yeah, that's normal.
Let's talk about shadow loss.
Yeah.
'Cause this is a term that you coined.
It's my work, yeah.
Explain what that is.
Yeah. So shadow loss is a loss in life, not of life. And a shadow loss is only something that we can claim for ourselves. It is not a diagnostic term. It was not developed in a clinical lab for the purpose of diagnosing someone and building a treatment plan. It is like a word that people can use to describe their lived experience. And the idea with it is it saves emotional labor. So it would work like this. So if I told you, Allison, one of my friends ghosted me, and honestly, it's a shadow loss. Me saying that just saved me from having to be like, no, we've been friends for 4 years.
Right, I'm gonna explain
we
it.
did this. We felt this together. I went through this with her. I don't have to relive any of that. I just saved all myself that work by just being able to be like, it was a shadow loss for me. With shadow losses, another common shadow loss is a medical diagnosis. So, for example, you could have two people that are diagnosed with infertility. One person might experience that as a shadow loss, but the other one might not. You know, it might not might be
Right.
a bummer, but it may not be something that they actively grieve. Divorces, retirement. Many people retire and they end up grieving because they're like loss of identity, but there's a societal pressure to be like, aren't you so happy you're not working anymore? And they're like, no, but society doesn't want to hear that. Medical diagnoses, getting ghosted, a business failing, filing for bankruptcy. I mean, losing a dream, the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, getting fired unexpectedly. I mean, anything can be a shadow loss. And in the English language, we actually don't have a super robust selection of words to describe our lived experiences. And one of the problems, in just Cole's opinion, is that we use a lot of language developed within and for a clinical environment in day-to-day life. But like we don't have the
Just
training.
talking about people constantly using the term narcissism when that is not what they mean.
Right. And so we're borrowing that. And so the problem is that then the average person lacks the nuance that would have come around being educated on that term, what it was developed for and around, and how it is to be used. And so we pull a lot of language from the clinical environment, and that can, for some people, result in feelings of shame. So, for example, being told, I have a story that I have permission to share. There was a gentleman who's youngish. He'd been married only a few years. His wife died, and he was in like grief counseling. And his therapist told him that, oh, you're, because he was really he was Jewish. He was really upset because now he's going to have to like his wife is dead. That's one thing. But now he has to show up again as a single Jew and have to be like at all these holidays and just like all of this stuff that he's now single to. He had just like finally like found his person and all this. And his therapist told him that, well, that's secondary grief. But that really upset
minimizes
him.
it.
Yeah, because he's like, there's nothing secondary about this. She's dead. I've accepted that. I am living in this reality now, and this is primary for me. But there's nothing wrong with the term secondary grief within a clinical context,
Right, it's
because
how he
that's how
heard
the
it.
therapist is going to create a diagnosis and treatment plan. But to a person, we only know what the words mean. And so the word secondary can be experienced as minimizing. And I want to be clear, like I'm not knocking my colleagues' work, because
Right.
it's really important. And I'm just really interested in this problem we have where we have a lack of language to help us accurately describe our lived experiences.
Is there a language that is better at this?
Not necessarily better, but I mean, the language you use is a reflection of the culture that formed it. Like Spanish, for example, handles the concepts of grief differently than we do in English. Like it's not a direct translation. Like dolor in Spanish is like pain, but it can also be like grief, and it's just not an apples to apples translation. I've actually found that studying death words in other languages, just looking them up or talking to someone who speaks the language, can actually give you really good insight about how your primary language like handles it. Like in the US, I mean, we have death and grief and loss and all of these sorts of words, but other languages will sometimes have more specificity and they'll kind of divide those concepts up in different ways.
Does German have a lot of words?
Oh my God, I love the Germans because they just like create words all the time. Like I read an article that during the pandemic, there's been like 60 new words that have been accepted into the German language. And it's all like, because the language works, you can mash words together.
Yeah.
So Germans tend to be very like accurate about what they're describing. Spanish to me is like very... it's artful. I think Spanish is like it's speaking art, but I'm thinking that as someone whose primary language is English,
right?
Having acquired Spanish later, so yeah.
I think we should do. I'm trying to figure out what we should do. I think we should take questions from listeners. I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Allison Rosen, all sorts of fun stuff. There's bonus episodes of The Friend Zone. That's my Patreon bonus podcast. There's a level where you can text me and I'll text you back. There you can see videos of the Thursday show and also outtakes. Alternate photos that weren't used. Hot gossip, all sorts of stuff. Subscribe for a year, get 2 months free, and also you can get your question ahead of the line, and we have a song.
When we ask, they send them in. They're wondering how you have been. So thanks so much for answering these questions from our fans.
Okay. Alyssa Van Dyke says, question, my father was a public figure regionally, so his death was very much a public affair. What advice would you give to a family whose loved one was a public figure? It felt really different than other funerals I've been to, number-wise, but also feeling the need to entertain people at the viewing who didn't really know my dad privately, but felt like they owned a part of him. Or maybe it's the same, but it's my dad, so I obviously felt different.
Yeah. That is a beautiful question, and it touches on a type of like a loss experience that not everybody has. You only have it if you like have lived it and know what it feels like. So typically when somebody dies, support is received like inward. If you are immediate to the loss, then everyone supports you. And then if you're like friends with the person, then you are supporting them. And then, the sort of farther out in the rungs you go from the dead person, you maybe are not receiving support on the very outer rungs.
Right.
When someone dies that people have a relationship with, even though they never met that person before, like a celebrity or an author or a musical artist, any of those sort of people, what can happen is that person needs to express their relationship. And so sometimes what can happen is then you end up having the grievers, the people affected by the immediacy of that loss, having to then end up supporting like randoms who you've never met before and you don't even know their name. And it's kind of a little bit like an imbalance of power. Like you have someone like, okay, like when you have a podcast and you have people, they know so much about you, but you don't know them. You don't know their name. You don't know where they live. You don't know where they work, but they could.
Unless they're on Patreon.
Yes, exactly. But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so when there's a death in those communities, the only option somebody has is to express their, like how important that person was to them. Because also it's kind of interesting. So it's really hard to support somebody in grief when you don't know them or have a relationship with them. And so when someone like famous dies and then their family is left, the grievers who come who didn't have a relationship with the deceased, those immediate family members are like a conduit to the last chance to give the message, the last chance to have it be a two-way street relationship.
Right. Like there's a transference.
Yeah. It's like, people want to come and just, that's the only chance they will have to say their piece about how important this person was. Also, this happens with prominent people in religious communities that die, like big famous rabbis or priests or whatever. So what do you do about it? Really, the only thing you can do is be aware. This is like something that I would communicate, like if you're working with a funeral home, be like, hey, that is a notable person. The funeral home will know if it's in the community. And just to make sure that there's some like line management or just being able to talk through what the family wants to experience or not experience. Some people will be very comforted hearing how much somebody's work or life affected others. But not all people will. The problem is that this is basically something that is not talked about in advance because it's not part of any like normal conversation that people have. So what happens is what exactly happened to your supporter there. Like it happened and they like lived through it. So hopefully just talking about this will help somebody somewhere. But really about the best thing you can do is be aware and structure funeral services around that. I also recommend creating a place online and like putting it in the obituary. Please leave your memories here on this webpage or whatever it might be, and then kind of like helping to funnel some of that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Lisa Murphy Tate says, grief is something we are never taught by our families until we lose someone. Does Cole think this needs to change? If so, how do we change this? Many children and teens encounter loss and grief without proper communication skills or techniques, which can turn into a variety of less than desirable behaviors, mental illness, dysfunction, etc. Side note, I used to work for a grief center in southwestern Illinois.
Oh, okay, wonderful. I have a book coming out about this for kids.
Oh, yes.
It comes out September 3rd, 2024.
Oh, my gosh.
But it's because it's now a full-color illustrated book. It's called A Guide to Your Grief. Now, aside from that, I really think that death and dying education should be in grade schools, to be honest, because it's normal, and everything around you dies, not just people. Pets, chairs wear out, computers, what do we say? Computers die. Like it's everywhere, and it's also all over TV, all over the news, all in music. So it's not like the kids are not being exposed to this, and I believe it's time to have some sort of structured information provided.
Do you think it's not because of the difference in belief of the afterlife and like this sort of like people feeling that it's a religious thing?
There's a number of factors that I believe are like why this is not a standard part of American education. And part of it is like what is incentivized in our education, what schools receive incentives for offering.
Working for the man.
So yeah, like basically becoming good workers. So the pandemic has created more children than in recent history who have lost without a parent. And I cannot tell you the number of inquiries that like I have gotten for like this book, for example, because they're desperate for material that is written for kids to them. It's not written like above them. And so many parents, this is one of the most common questions I get is from parents that are like, my daughter, like what do I say? Like, what do I say? And I know it's really hard because as parents, okay, what have you been told about how to talk about death and dying with your kids?
So the only places that I've received any instruction have been, so I mean, the answer is nothing, but I have talked about it with my therapist.
Yeah.
And then also my kids go to a really good preschool and they have like chickens and rabbits and things like that. And so periodically we'll get an email that's like, sad news about Susie, our beloved chicken, Susie died. Just wanted to, give you a heads up. We told the children we use really straightforward language, like her body stopped working. Yes. She wasn't in pain or something like that. Like that's it. So
yes,
but without that preschool, my kids would not have, and that has kind of instructed me in how to talk about it. But
yes, that's wonderful. That's totally accurate. Like just be like direct about it. And usually the kids learn from adults to be freaked out by it. So the problem is if someone like a kid asks you about it and you're like, okay.
Right.
Like whispering is telling someone, oh my God, this is serious, more serious than I realized. So it's also important to be aware of your body language. And the thing is, we learned how to deal with it from the environment we grew up in. And the people we grew up around, they learned it from the environment they grew up in. Now, in my opinion, death is actually not the taboo in the United States. We are surrounded by death all the time.
Grief, right?
It's grief. Grief is actually where all the issues come up. That's where people have problems. That's where it gets messy. Death is pretty simple. It's like, it's a normal, it's the end point in the life cycle. It's not that complicated. Grief is where all the complication is. And we really don't have grief literacy, which is what we especially need. Like, for example, I wish kids were taught grief is not just emotions. It's not just feelings. Like, there's physical stuff. So that way, we want to teach kids how to modulate and regulate their own grief responses so that they can learn, like, oh, I'm acting out here, or I hit Billy or something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm sad my grandpa died. But we only really teach that sadness is grief. And that's a lot of the messaging that kids hear, and it's not enough. So.
Right. That's really interesting. So when I graduated college, I've talked about this before, not in that much detail, but like I was very close with one of my professors. I had a huge crush on him. And he committed suicide that summer. And that was like, so how old was I? 22. That was, I would say, my mom's parents both died when I was 6. So I had been around, that was like the first deaths, and then, loss of pets. But then when my professor died, that floored me for like 2 years. it was just such a huge, because this was someone that, it's a long story, but he was so, in a way where I look back and it's like, I would have seen that relationship differently now, you know, but I didn't have the life, under my belt to not think like I'm in love with him. And when I graduate, we can be together. I had pinned my whole future on this guy, which nothing physical ever happened between us. I think that our email relationship and we talked on the phone and all of that was like, probably inappropriate, except not explicitly. Or I imagined the whole thing. I don't know. Sometimes I think like, did I imagine the whole relationship? But I saved all the emails, and like, I haven't done it in a number of years, but periodically I'll go back. I would go back and read them, and I'd be like, I didn't imagine this. Like, there was something there. But anyway, when I think about how heavily I grieved and how much I like let it show, I feel embarrassed. I say that in response to what you were saying about like the taboo is about grief. Because I was just this like sad, just like dramatic, and I like I played in a band at the time, and I remember like introducing a song, being like, "This is about my friend. He died." But I feel like so embarrassed, and just like going to the campus and like getting lunch with other professors to try to make sense of it, and just I don't know. I just feel like,
but you're also
get
now,
it together, lady.
You're looking back at it from the eyes of someone who has had a lot more life experience, and so at the time, all of your other professors, they were looking at you like, "Oh, she's like 22,"
probably,
so like, right, which is exactly how you would treat a 22-year-old that was grieving over their professor that had died. But the grief is the hard part, is the messy part, is the part where
messy,
it makes you feel vulnerable, and then like you
out of control,
explosive things, and you don't know where to put it, and there's no like, we don't have like, we have a container for when there's a dead body, the funeral. Okay, it's a nice container. It's an appropriate place to be wrecked. You can have the whole day to be wrecked and cry, put in public and everything. We don't really have that for shadow losses. And while your professor died, and that's like what I would call a big death, there was a shadow loss there because you had a relationship that was hidden that died. And nobody saw it. And also it wasn't socially acceptable to like have a vigil for the death of your romantic life. Like in your mind.
Totally.
With him.
I felt very like, this is the weirdest feeling, because had we actually been together, then everyone would understand what I'm going through. But instead, because this was like this sort of secret-y thing.
Yeah. Have you heard of disenfranchised grief?
No,
That
I don't
is
think so.
a term by Dr. Kenneth Doka. Disenfranchised grief is any time grief is not seen or recognized by society. Shadow losses may or may not be disenfranchised, but like in your case, it was disenfranchised because you knew not to be like telling everyone about you were in love, with
Right.
him, right? Like so it was like not seen or recognized by your peer group, by society. So as a result, your grief was kind of left hanging.
Yes.
And like just unresolved. Yeah.
And the nature of suicide is that it's like you don't get closure on that one.
Yeah. There's
You know.
always going to be questions.
Yeah. Speaking of questions, okay. Becky Milner, did she grow up in Northern Kentucky? No, you grew up in Cincinnati.
Yeah, but it's like the same. It's like geographically very, very similar. But Northern Kentucky is my heart home. Okay. Yeah.
Did she enjoy teaching embalming mortuary science?
I did not teach embalming. I taught thanatology at like 2 to 3 mortuary colleges, and I loved it. I loved it. Yeah.
Drew Spicer, how does she feel about the pop science side of senescence or the anti-aging movement that's gained traction over the last several years as it pertains to our view of death? And with the easy assumption that we'll never be rid of death, do you think those movements have a net positive due to forced exposure or negative due to denial of, this is like an essay question, effect on our collective acceptance of it or on the perception of death work?
Great. A+ question.
I know, really good.
Excellent.
I have the best patrons.
There's like this life extension kind of movement where people are trying to figure out how to get humans to live longer, healthier. I think that's great. I think it would be great if we could extend the average lifespan. I worry about, are we extending it for everyone? Are we making sure we're not just extending it for white people? Because that is kind of where a lot of the money is coming from and who it is supporting. I do not support the idea of like trying to ever get to a point where we don't die. And I actually don't think it is good to live a really, really long time, because that is what allows for very severe power differentials to occur. Because what happens, like, imagine that you start saving for retirement at the age of 30. You finally get to $1 million, I don't think at the age of 60, and you're like, I'm going to retire. Well, imagine if you had 30 more years on that money you set aside. You're going to retire with many more millions of dollars. So if people don't die, that's going to allow the acquisition of more resources, and the people who will be able to do that first will already typically be in a position of power.
Yeah.
So for society, and there's like a whole like theoretical thing about this where like sociologists will model what society would look like if we didn't die, and it would be bad. It would be eventually you'd end up with just a really small number of people in power, and death is the thing that makes life good. Death is why we get out of bed. Death is why we have kids. Death is why we decide to put ourselves through writing a book. If you were never going to die, well, I can start my book next year. I can do it in 10 years. I'm never going to die. So death is this really magical thing, this force that we're all born with that is terrible because it ends a life, but it is also simultaneously the thing that gives us the magic juice that makes us do stuff and try to make the world a better place. If we didn't die, we wouldn't have that. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's my feelings.
I'm just realizing that I nap like I'm going to live forever. Like,
a good nap is so good.
I know. I think I'd probably take too
That's
many.
like a reason to reincarnate, because you just want to have a good nap again.
I'm coming back for I want to be buried in my robe. Tony, right? Tell Daniel.
Burial robe.
Okay. Josoko says, there's 5 questions. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Seeing her beloved Ruby's exit was heartbreaking yet so beautiful. How does she feel about moving far away from her gravesite?
That's amazing. My puppy dog, Ruby. Ruby's my dead dog. So Ruby was buried at a cemetery in Northern Kentucky, and God, I miss that dog. So I went back home for the first time after moving here at the beginning of December, and I went down with my mom and dad while they took me to the airport to fly back here. And we all got out of the car, and I saw Ruby, and I cried again. I think Ruby's really happy. So Rick, who is the superintendent at that cemetery, Rick I love Rick. I miss him so much. I miss the cemetery there. He actually hand-selected her burial spot. And he chose a spot so that she could see the sunrise and the sunset, and he oriented her so that she could see that, like, in the springtime, water collects nearby and all the birds come, so that way she would have birds to, like, look at. And I cannot tell you how much comfort that gives me. And I'm like, I can't take her from that. Like, so anyway, I feel so good where she is. She sees every sunrise and sunset. She's like runs the cemetery because I know she's the boss of all the ghosts there. That's what I believe is to be true. So that's a great question. And for people who like, I don't know, that was something I worried about. I'm like, okay, I'm burying my dog here permanently, moving across the country. Am I going to regret it? No, I don't, because I really like where she's buried, and she like is with people she knows. So
That's so sweet. Okay, I'm hoping to take her thanabotany class this year. What is her favorite thanabotanical? And you should explain what that is, or maybe you already did. Specimen native to Southern California.
Okay. So thanabotany is a field that I pioneered. It was developed out of I had a research fellowship. Thanabotany is where plants, people, and death, dying, grief, and bereavement intersect. So if you're like a plant person, but you're also really interested in like death and dying, thanabotany is for you. And I now have people in 26 countries that have learned with me on that, and the field is growing. So there are all different types of plants that have a thanabotanical usage across time, cultures, countries, history, all of that. Here in Southern California, I just got accepted to the California Master Gardeners program.
Ooh.
And it starts tomorrow. And I'm really excited about that because I'm going to be able to get a really good education in California natives, native plants and all that kind of stuff, and being able to have access to reliable information about how those plants were used traditionally. Here, I will say, in Southern California, the California poppy, the orange poppy, is very important, I'd say, culturally to this area. Everyone knows the California poppies, right? People look forward to when they bloom in the spring.
Yeah,
it's like
super bloom.
Yeah, it's important. And it's a symbol that people recognize. I would argue that that is actually a modern thanabotanical plant in the sense that it has any plant that becomes part of a community or culture's identity becomes a representation of that person in some way, or it can. I have several documented like stuff found in obituaries recently of people who died, and they requested California poppies, like imagery or if, like pressings of them because they weren't in season, but that is named as like the plant that they connect with and represents their home to them. So that is a recent example.
Okay. 4. What? I skipped over 3 because that was about cicadas in your vagina. 4. What seasonal color does she guess Allison is?
Oh, okay. So some of the best money I ever spent was on hiring someone to like hold different colors up to me and figure out what like makes me look the best. And what that means is what you want to do is find colors that help reduce dark spots or wrinkles. If you're into that, I prefer to have less disruptions in my face. That's just what my aesthetic, it's what I like to look at. So they did like 200 colors or something like that.
Who is it? Like a color theory person or like us?
I did a lot of research, and I hired Carol Braley, who's based in Canada. She can do this virtually, and she's done excellent work and is, I think, very reasonable. Literally, the money I spent on doing this was like less than 2 sweaters I bought and never wore.
Okay.
And anyway, when I had it done, it like helped me realize, I'm like, wow, that's why I keep buying that color and never wearing it because it doesn't look good on me. But I'm a true autumn, so I look good in like autumnal colors. Yeah. I'm curious what you are. My husband is a true winter because we had his done too. But it really is like really nice. It's helpful.
I feel like I'm a winter.
Yeah, because typically you have a lot of contrast in your features. My husband does. He's like has Italian heritage. He's got really dark hair, but he's like more, I don't know. So I don't know. I could see you being a winter. Like if you look good in like true white or true, that's the only palette that can wear true black and true white and have it look good.
Well, God, I hope I am because I wear a lot of black.
I know.
Yeah.
This is why a lot of people don't do it because they don't want to find out that black is not a good color on them. And it's true for me.
So what color were the sweaters that you never wore? What color do you keep buying?
They were like pastel colors. I like to look at them, but when they're on me, I'm just like I look, and what it does is it makes me look more dull. So anyway, I was able to use this knowledge to my monetary advantage. I had like a deposition for I was in a car accident, and I had a background that was pure white, which brings out my scar that I got in the accident, and it brings out wrinkles and it brings out dark spots. Whereas if I have like a background that is one of these colors, it minimizes, like you won't even notice my scar on my forehead. So I did that during the deposition, and it was helpful because the attorneys and stuff could clearly see that my face was jacked up, but I was using the color theory to like enhance that in that case.
That's so smart.
So yes, and my attorney was like asked for all this information because he's going to have his clients do it so that they can like, and I think it's so like, yeah,
it's really smart.
Yeah, so
that is really smart. Okay. And then, when's your book coming out? Well, we know September
3rd, 2024.
But you have another book, right?
I'm working on some other stuff, but nothing's announced.
Okay.
So,
Katie Kistler says, and this is the last one. Cole is a delight. Thank you for your documentary of Ruby's exit. It helped me with some anticipatory grief I was having recently. The daisy chains. Will you be making more of these? What other fun, crafty things are you up to these days?
Oh, I love. Okay, that's really nice to be playing like, no, when we dead dog. I think that is the coolest thing. So daisy chains. I started making daisy chains, which is just like this little beaded necklace style with like little flowers. When Ruby was dying, and then now it's become like a little philanthropic project of mine. So 2 times a year in June, Ruby's birthday, and usually like November, I will do a daisy chain drop. So periodically, like I will make daisy chains like on the weekends or whatever, and then I will sell those, and then I donate proceeds or a portion of proceeds depending to different causes. So people buy these daisy chains, and it comes in like this. I had custom boxes made, and I had like a little booklet. But I am a hardcore crafter. I have a big piece of furniture that's refrigerator sized that you open it up, and I have more than 40 different crafts.
That's so cool.
In it. So I'm always crafting. It really helps. I think I need to do that in order to do my job, because I'm exposed to so much like upsetting stuff all the time. So I need to like bead or like draw, or I don't know. I'm making corsages tomorrow, and I'm making the little corsage holder. So that's like my upcoming craft. So
do you ever find yourself crying with people?
Sometimes. And I think sometimes that's really helpful and appropriate. Sometimes you have to be really careful though, because you don't want to make it about you. You know, like there's a difference between like, oh, you reminded me of my grief, so I'm crying for myself, versus like you're crying and I feel connected to you and I'm meeting you where you are. That can feel very different. So
right.
It takes, I think, experience to know when.
Yeah. Alie told me I should ask you about pickleball.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with pickleball. Listen, it is so fun. It is so good.
Is it played on a tennis court with little rackets? Is that pickleball?
So,
what is pickleball?
A lot of times you'll see people playing on a tennis court, but the tennis court is bigger than a pickleball court. A pickleball court is smaller, the net isn't as high, and you use a smaller paddle. Pickleball, I mean, the people like say it's like it's like retiree sport. I mean, it is. There's a lot of people that are, but there's also a lot of young people that do it. My husband and I, we play a lot of Sundays with some of our really good friends, and it's so great because I will get like a workout according to my Apple Watch, but I will not be wrecked, and I will be able to go out and brunch afterwards. And it's something where you can like be actually playing. I'm not good at sports with balls or like intense things, plays. I don't do that. If you are not an athletic person, you can handle pickleball. It is so much fun. I have actually decided to make it the official sport of the School of American Thanatology just so I can figure out how to get custom paddles made and like to justify it as a business expense. And then I want to actually like sponsor some of my students in different parts of the world to like have a little pickleball team, because I just believe in it. I also love it because you can do intergenerational, which I think intergenerational relationships are really important. So it's awesome because you can be a 19-year-old playing with a 68-year-old, and the 68-year-old will whip you. So yeah, I'm a big pickleball fan. My husband and I started the Northeast Los Angeles Pickleball Association. It's like a little pickleball club. That's how much we're into it. So
that is awesome. Okay, boy, I could talk to you forever, and I have talked to you forever. Let's quickly do either Just Me or Everyone, or Hey, Go Fuck Yourself. Which one would you rather do?
Let's do It's Just Me or Everyone.
Okay.
So I was like thinking about this.
Sometimes I ponder on something I have thought or done. just me or everyone?
All right.
Is it just me? Or does everyone have like a shared bizarre language that you have developed with your partner over a period of years, where you have like words that make literally no sense, but you both use them all the time and you don't even notice it, and it's just part of like your shared language? Do you have that with?
Yes, but more so I have it with my sister.
Okay, yeah, yes.
And it's been
with
going
any
on
close
since we
person.
were like teenagers.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But yes, with Daniel I do. But I feel like it's more of like a full language with my sister.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any like words that you guys use that mean something that's completely inaccurate to what the word actually means? Say it. Say it. Say it.
Okay. We call. Oh, I've never talked about this.
Bring it. Yes.
Okay. We call breasts goats.
Okay.
Because I had
for
a
it.
dream that I was wearing a Mickey Mouse nightgown, which is what I used to wear at the time, and I was hanging out with this band that they were friends of mine, and I was so into them. And one of them turned to the other one and said, "Look at Alice." The dream.
Goats.
Look at Allison's breasts. They look like two goats.
Oh my god! And it's stuck. And that's
So my
what
sister
you
and I,
call
we call them the
to
goats.
this day.
Yeah. And then for some reason we call
that's funny.
butts the butt is the whale, but we don't use that one nearly as often. Goats is we never don't
like it's
say
replaced.
That. Yes,
the word
it's replaced.
in
Yes,
your
exactly.
language. Yes.
I mean, we have so. I'm trying to think of other ones. We have so many.
I love that. This is like my new favorite question to ask people.
Yeah, it's
like,
really
what is
good.
the word that you use that makes literally no sense, but it is like understood and accepted?
Yeah. You smell is I love you. Aww. So like we'll just text each other. You smell.
Yeah. I love it.
Which is it's insane. I mean, and like if you're really trying to say it, it's you stink.
Yeah.
Wait, what are ones that you and your husband have?
Well, I made a list because I was like, get into it. So we have this really weird way of saying we're going to take a shower. So, okay. During the Trump era, do we remember rinse Priebus? Was like,
Yes.
Okay. So,
Did you say you're going to take a rinse Priebus?
yeah. So at some point, because his name was Rinse, I was like, I'm going to take a rinse Priebus. Okay. And so now it's also evolved because I looked up like what the word rinse means. And then I was like, what is the word, like the counterpart for like when you're taking a shower that is more liberal, or like your water is being used more liberally.
Okay.
And the word is sluice. Which is also another
that's a fun word.
So because a rinse Priebus is going to be more conservative.
Okay.
So that means for us that we're taking like a short
quick one, yeah.
shower. So we'll be like, I'm going to take a rinse Priebus or rinse Preeb. We kind of shorten it now.
sure.
And then we let each other know if we're taking like a longer shower. We'll just be like, well, it's a sluice, because the definition of sluice is it's liberal water.
I love all of this.
So this is like what, and I realized like that when you die, your secret language dies with you.
Yeah, that's
It's
sad.
not preserved. It's like
Yeah.
these things that you have together.
Well, so when my professor died, I was like, what do I do with all of these memories and these thoughts and these inside jokes and all of this? Like, it's just,
Yeah. Because between the two of you, you're the only living person that holds them.
yeah.
Yeah. It's intense.
My husband and I have I'm realizing like a lot of language around our dog.
Yep.
You must have that too,
Yes.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I don't know why. I mean, like, I feel like everyone has 1,000 nicknames for their animal.
Yes.
At some point we started calling her the Noon.
Oh.
But why?
See, this is what's funny. When you lose the whole, like, why it happened,
Yes.
then you're just left with this word, and neither of you can remember where
Right.
it came from. And it is wild. It makes
Yeah.
no sense, like, that you use this as your communication.
Like, when she is being, like, spazzy or barking or just being crazy, she's the Noon. And she's nooning out. She's nooning out. She's being a real Noon. But why? I don't know.
You'll have to ask and follow up with people.
Yeah.
Make it a patron bonus for, like, why.
She's also Bergens, which comes from Wendelberg.
Oh.
Of course. Her name's Wendy. I should have said that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
We have so
Look at
many.
all these words. See, now you're going to be thinking about it.
I
and
totally
you're
will.
gonna see it.
I love all this.
I love the stories behind
Yeah.
it.
Do you and Flo have language?
Not really. Maybe some little things here and there. Nothing's really coming to mind. We have like dumb names that we'll like call, for some reason we all have like aliases. Like we've started calling Bentley the dog. He's Robert.
Oh yeah,
I love
logical.
that.
Makes
That's
total
fun.
sense.
And I call her Susan all the time.
What does she call you?
Paul. Well, that rarely happens, but for several, I don't even. Yeah, it's one of those dumb things that like has.
Yeah.
I don't even know. It is just nonsense that started. And
I
we're
love
all
it.
the
Yeah.
blender skills. That's
Victor
our last
calls
name.
me.
The blender skills?
Yeah, Paul, Susan, and Robert.
Victor calls me Donkey and has as long as I've known him. And then he'll shorten it to Donk. Like, what are you doing, Donk? And that it does not faze me whatsoever. It's my name. So,
That's so, I love it. This is such a good question. Thank you.
I worked on it.
It's really,
I
really
wanted
good.
to show up.
You really, oh my
with
God.
food
Bread
and a good
butter and a perfect just me or everyone. I love it. Thank you so much. Tell everyone where they can find you. Plug all your things, please.
You can find me at coleimperi.com. And I have a weekly column like about grief, but like in the vein of how you've heard me talk about it. So it's not going to be like, you're not going to feel bad after reading it. And you can get that at grieformadness.com or on my website. It comes out on Thursdays. And then you can visit the school at americanthanatology.com. I want to try to put some stuff on YouTube. So you like subscribe to me on YouTube. That would be cool.
And is it Cole Imperi?
Yeah, just my name.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the only Cole Imperi. Like, there's no other one. So
you're
just
so
Google me
lucky.
and everything will show up.
Tony, what about you?
Twitter and Instagram at
Tony Thaxton.
and Bizarre Albums every Tuesday.
And if you like what you're hearing, or even if you don't, please make sure you're subscribed. Leave us a nice comment on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Click 5 stars. You can watch this on YouTube, youtube.com/Allison Rosen. And while you're there, subscribe and please like and comment on all the videos. I've been on there for a long time, so every single one. But just make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on social media at Allison Rosen on Twitter and Instagram. And I already mentioned my main Patreon, but new Patreon alert. I feel like we need some kind of sound to indicate an alert. Oh my goodness. Cicadas. Is that what they sound like?
Of course.
So Upwardly Weekly is sadly no more. However, Todd and I are not hanging up our podcast caps. I don't know what we're still putting out our podcast and Todd and I are continuing. So we're on Patreon. There's just one level, $2 a month. I think my throat made a lot of sounds because it was excited. And you can support that if you want. Patreon.com/Allison and Todd. Allison with one L, Todd with one D. Take it up with our parents. Cole, it was so nice finally meeting you. It was so wonderful talking. I'm very excited to try the bread and butter, which I'm going to do in 1 second. Listeners, thank you for listening. I love you. You matter. Goodbye.
Hey, do you know about the Allison Rosen Show? We had a good time, but now we gotta go. Yeah, Allison Rosen, here's your new best